Welcome to KUMO-AUDIOBOOK Arifureta God of Extinction Chapter 46, once more. For chapters 10,281 words / 41-minute read. Chapter 46, once more. 2,159 words. Aziel rested lazily upon a raised stone platform, his hands tucked comfortably behind his head as he stared into empty space. Sprawled across its hard surface, his knee-length, double-breasted brown overcoat lay spread out loosely across his body, covering a charcoal-black turtleneck shirt. Below his torso were slim-fit black jeans riddled with distressed rips trailing down the front, an intentional design that appeared both striking and of high quality. And to top it all off, black slip-on loafers that possessed a silver buckle in place of laces fit snug around his feet, made of a soft material that closely resembled suede. He was outfitted quite casually, though his current location bore a sharp contrast to his attire. Towering, thick redwood trees surrounded him, standing erect with a sturdiness that seemed impenetrable. They were about as wide as 10 ordinary trees put together, making for quite the awe-inspiring sight. A tranquil atmosphere blanketed the entire forest, peaceful, drowned in complete silence without any sign of other living beings. Releasing a soft breath of air, Aziel yawned languidly, slowly blinking his moistened eyes. What the hell? Reflexively clicking his tongue in annoyance, he sat up straight, leaning back with the support of his arms as he remembered something unpleasant. He absent-mindedly swept a hand across the stone platform's smooth, hard surface, his expression indiscernible. It's about that time. They should be heading back soon. A calm voice escaped his lips, a soft tone that did nothing to disturb the serenity around him. After defeating the Arashan Queen, the trio had naturally descended to the next floor, which was also the exact place he currently resided. He estimated that the next floor would also be the last one, the final room where the Hydra was located, so he wanted to move quickly and complete this labyrinth at once. However, the two girls, Yu and Suzu, had both unanimously decided to conquer this floor without his help, leaving Aziel to toil about all on his own. Since he was far too monstrous for any of the creatures dwelling within this labyrinth to put up even the slightest bit of resistance, the two opted to keep him away from the battlefield entirely. After all, neither of the girls were comfortable with being virtually carried from floor to floor. They too wanted to pull their own weight, no matter how small. And for Suzu in particular, this was especially the case. Although, on the surface, that seemed to be their primary purpose for going without him, Aziel knew it wasn't the only reason. However, this fact alone wasn't what caused Aziel such discomfort. I don't know. I don't want to think about it. Fuck. Unconsciously wrinkling his brows, he voiced in a bewildered, slightly irritated tone. Yu's fight with the giant spider still remained at the forefront of his mind, recalling specific details that gave him a peculiar feeling, one he hadn't felt in quite a while. It was persistent. A dull sensation which couldn't be forgotten. Asterisk. 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 An overwhelming stench of blood permeated the vast room, putrid, almost sickening. Corpses of human-sized spiders littered the ground, often forming small hills in more areas than one. Standing afar, a young man, tall and captivating in appearance, stared at the ghastly scene ahead. Two entities clashed, a deadly duel to vanquish the other and attain absolute victory. And yet, with no change in expression, the young man, Aziel, watched his vampire progenitor get swallowed up by the Arashan Queen, leaving no trace behind. For a moment, it felt as though time itself had ground to a halt. The Arashan Queen, Suzu, who stood beside him, the entire world was frozen in place. His fingers twitched. Akin to a single droplet of ink seeping into clear waters, a tainted seed had been sown. Slowly, it spread, within the confines of his heart, tendrils ran amok like blood dyeing the open sea. Swimming freely, it festered, begging to be released, promising ruin, havoc, naught but pure destruction in its wake. A scale of apocalyptic proportions. A chaotic feeling, not completely unfamiliar yet somewhat foreign. But, a breath of hot air that nearly produced visible steam escaped his lips, returning him to his usual calm, aloof frigid bearing. Or perhaps, not completely. Alarmed, the girl at his side, Suzu Taniguchi, suddenly looked up at him with a mixture of shock and horror, quickly grabbing hold of his large hand in an effort to stall this potential eruption. The reason for this was naturally the frightening wave of bloodlust that threatened to spill out at any given moment. A tsunami like no other, fully prepared to crush everything under its weight, had surfaced due to a sole person's influence. An expression that still hadn't changed, remaining tranquil from start to finish, terrifying. However, the young man turned his gaze downward, looking at the beautiful white-haired girl who attempted to comfort him through her warmth. At once, his sunken pale golden eyes and slightly constricted pupils briefly returned to normal upon meeting her troubled stare, something she immediately took notice of. Even while such murky bloodlust coiled about his frame, there was no sign of it as he looked at her. A transition that was like day and night. A realization that was akin to a rush of dopamine and euphoria, as though her heart had been doused in sugary sweetness. Still, what took precedence at that moment wasn't her feelings, but the unusual response from Aziel himself. After a few seconds, he finally disengaged eye contact and returned his attention back to the scene ahead. Although killing intent could no longer be felt, his mere presence oozed a sense of fatal danger. He wasn't one to hesitate normally, but because he could hear his vampire progenitor's breathing, feel her pulse, and smell her flowing blood, he didn't dare to annihilate the Arashan queen with her still inside. As much as he wanted to brutally torture it till it no longer wished to breathe, he ultimately refrained from interfering. In a way, the filthy creature was quite lucky that it had perished the way it did, for the treatment it would have received at Aziel's hands was far worse than anyone could ever imagine. And at the same time, he had also recognized his own peculiar reaction to this situation, giving him a slightly conflicted feeling. Her figure bathed in blood, showering in dark green. Even as a child, he never really cared too much about others. With the exception of his mother, everyone else was nothing more than mere acquaintances. Reflected in his eyes was his vampire princess, his progenitor. Yet, how was it that this girl, no, perhaps both of them, were capable of stirring his emotions so profoundly? She looked at him, her expressionless face belied a tender affection. Killing, deceiving, blackmailing, he used to think it was strange that he performed these actions so naturally, but as time went on, he eventually stopped caring. Wreathed in an aura of majesty, she stepped toward him, a small stride. However, this was the reason behind his confusion. Was it truly all right for him to care? A bewitching countenance, she arrived at his side, a gentle smile tugging at her lips. And yet, at this moment, none of that mattered. Only the naked girl in front of him had his attention. "I'm back. You spoke," a hint of longing in her gaze. "You are," he responded casually, giving no indication of his previous inner conflict. "Took you long enough." Suzu chimed in, grumbling to herself. Briefly glancing at her out of the corners of her eyes, you ignored the girl and continued. "So what did you think? About?" He began walking slowly, placing a hand atop her head as he passed by, prompting both girls to follow after him. Despite being completely naked, you showed no hint of embarrassment. A reddish hue dyed the tips of her ears. "Well, maybe just the slightest bit. You know that." "I have no idea what you're talking about." "MGH, don't tease me, Aziel." She pouted, knowing he was playing dumb. Then, you suddenly found herself in his arms, lifted into a princess carry. She stared up at him with a slightly flustered expression, confused as to why he did such a thing. "You did well. Yeah, I liked it, but..." However, Aziel continued, answering her previous question. Registering his words, she nodded slowly, looking into his eyes. "What am I supposed to do when I see you get eaten like that?" You stiffened immediately, sensing the underlying malice in his tone. He looked down at her. "I won't lie to you, it pissed off." She averted her gaze, not knowing how to react to this unfamiliar situation, and instead, opted to change the subject entirely. "But why like this? Why hold me?" Gesturing to his arms, she asked in a small voice. "Can I not hold you?" "That's not it. I just wanted to hold you. Should there be a reason?" "You don't have to say it if you don't want to. I'm about to put you back on the ground." Swiftly shaking her head, you buried her face into his chest. "I'm sorry, Aziel. I won't let anything else eat me but you." In response to that, Aziel paused for a moment before nodding. "You're on the right track. Asterisk. 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 Shaking his head, Aziel attempted to shake off these encroaching thoughts and leaned forward, taking one of his knees into his embrace as he sat comfortably. He stared silently at the lush field of colors around him, an image of both girls formed inside his subconscious. Before they had advanced to their current floor, he'd ended up leaving behind a powerful magic spell, one that nearly collapsed the entire room. Right. In hindsight, he couldn't make much sense of his actions, and even felt a bit repulsed by it. He wasn't an impulsive or emotional person, and always thought about the outcome of his decisions before following through. Everything he'd done thus far was because he wanted to, not because he was coerced or forced into it. He always lived within his means, seeking out assistance when he needed it, knowing when to make concessions when the situation called for it. There was no fear of failure. In essence, emotions held the smallest influence in his actions. That was why he was conflicted. Going through life, there were scarcely few people who could occupy his thoughts. But now, he had to admit it. These two girls, their feelings, they weren't one-sided. He liked them. Perhaps a bit too much. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk. Standing in front of a mangled corpse that was no less the size of the Arashan queen were two distinct female figures. Blood stained the vibrant green grass beneath their feet, and toppled redwood trees that were akin to mini skyscrapers lay strewn wildly across the ground. What remained of the guardian of this floor were merely chunks of flesh, pelt, and torn limbs, indicating the brutality in which it was dealt. It was supposed to be a great ape king but seemed more like a crippled baboon. What a buzzkill. A slightly high-pitched voice rang out, originating from a petite girl with snow-white hair. Lowering her gaze in mock despondency, she turned to look at the other figure standing beside her. Now do you mind telling me why you insisted on coming with me, even going so far as to leave your beloved Aziel behind? Hearing this, Yu side-eyed her expressionlessly, her silence speaking louder than words. Not talking doesn't make you mysterious. Say what you have to say or don't, I don't give a damn. I don't like you. Yu suddenly spoke, cutting off Suzu's irritated rant which caused her to gaze back quietly. A few seconds passed like this, neither saying a word, before. Well, the sentiment is shared. Suzu mumbled, kicking away a small pebble. You aren't my rival. Am I supposed to care? No, you don't have to, but Aziel likes you. So, we'll settle this once and for all. Incredulous, Suzu squinted, trying to make sense of Yu's words. And I'm guessing this means you want to fight. Correct. Yu answered without hesitation. PFT tilde ha 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 tilde. Suzu held her stomach, her laugh a melodious tune of madness and glee. Even like this, she possessed unmatched beauty, only rivaled by Yu herself. Ha tilde, it's funny you should say that. 2ve been waiting for this day, the day I could pummel your annoying ass face in. In an instant, her voice turned cold, emotionless, and uncaring. The atmosphere became tense, each side enveloped in a dreadful aura. Until. Well, the sentiment is shared. Yu mocked indifferently, signaling the start of a fierce battle. A duel never before seen by anyone of this world. This was a fight for true dominance. Chapter 47, Chapter 47, What End Awaits? 3,661 words. A wolf among a flock of sheep. A true predator whose might couldn't be opposed. Within the Orcus labyrinth, that was the position Suzu Taniguchi held. After obtaining unmatched strength, everything else simply fell into place. The vicious monsters that once tormented her thoughts ceaselessly were no longer an insurmountable threat. With power, a great force which severed, crushed, and decimated every foe that stood before her, she was invincible. The ferocious claws and fangs that once tore her flesh were now incapable of even reaching her. What was she even afraid of again? Ha ha ha. In response to her greatest desire, a single barrier manifested into existence, the key that had served to facilitate her perpetual Rainian indestructible force field. Armed with various absurd abilities, she quickly traversed through each floor at a speed beyond comprehension. She was able to defend herself against any and all attacks the monsters in the labyrinth had to offer, whilst simultaneously dispatching her enemies with a concentrated assault. She acquired many different skills through the act of consuming such creatures, only serving to bolster her growing dominance. Yes, what had been with her from the moment she was summoned to this world had ultimately become her greatest asset. A rather unconventional weapon, but a weapon that couldn't ever be replaced. TCH. So annoying. However, despite her seemingly indomitable strength, despite her ironclad will to overcome all adversity, she just couldn't defeat that annoying little vampire girl. No matter how many times she attacked, no matter how many times she dodged and defended, she couldn't win. Fucking hell. *SHWAABOOMM. *. Deep divots formed in the dirt beneath her feet as she was forced back by Yu's powerful strike. The ground shook magnificently under its oppressive weight, flinging curtains of soil and debris into the air. In front of Suzu's outstretched hand was a semi-transparent dark red force field, formed in the shape of a half-sphere. Steady ripples spread out across its surface, succeeding in mitigating the damage as best it could. Staring into Yu's indifferent blood-red eyes, she snarled viciously. Steady streams of mana gathered in her free hand, ready to be released at a moment's notice. Yet, the mana she had gathered fizzled out of existence, leaving her dumbfounded. It was only then that Suzu realized her mana reserves had dropped to dangerously low levels, and the crippling exhaustion that slowly but surely crept in. If this continued any longer, she would undoubtedly collapse. But that also wasn't acceptable. She hadn't even defeated Yu yet. How could she tap out now? No, it couldn't end like this. Don't be stubborn. Just then, a high-pitched, calming voice suddenly rang out, disrupting the previously tense atmosphere. The vampire girl stepped forward. You've lost. Standing regally with an unflinching gaze, Yu spoke with utmost certainty. Though she said that, the girl herself also was not in a state where she could continue for much longer. And it didn't take a genius to realize this fact either. PFFFT. As always, Yuri, full of shit. If I didn't know any better, I'd think a light breeze could carry you away at any moment. Suzu also took a step forward. So, tell me again, why should I give up? Her body swayed unsteadily, slowly but surely closing in on the annoying vampire, and Yu too refused to retreat. Both of their mana reserves were all but depleted. Fatigue was evident in their heavy breathing and sluggish movements. The only reason neither of them had died or sustained any fatal injuries thus far was because of their insane healing and life-saving abilities. Yu, of course, possessed far more mana than her, but Suzu, being the monster that she was, could efficiently utilize a more diverse set of skills with almost no effort. With all that, coupled with her higher physical stats, she'd managed to fight on even ground with Yu. An achievement no one else in the world other than Aziel could boast. Do I need to spell it out for you? You can't beat me. Quit before you die. The vampire progenitor's tone was cold enough to make one shiver, instilling the belief that she would undoubtedly follow through. What bullshit. I guess I'll have no choice but to rip you apart again to finally shut you up. And Suzu was no different. Both sides weren't willing to give in, as that would be no different from surrendering, conceding to the other party's wishes. Neither could allow that to happen. Be it their pride, beliefs, or affection for Aziel, there was no room for any of it to be trampled upon. As women carrying such vast amounts of power, no one had that right. Then die. Yu came within a few dozen feet of her, meeting Suzu head-on as she gradually quickened her pace and lashed out with her fist. *thumph*. But Suzu was prepared for it, immediately blocking the heavy punch with both arms that would have otherwise caved in her nose had it successfully connected. Still, Yu gave her no room to relax, releasing a sharp roundhouse kick toward her head. However, don't make me laugh. Guarding the side of her face with a single arm, Suzu effortlessly blocked Yu's attack, before countering with a straight punch of her own. Yet, as it was about to make contact, Yu had only just managed to tilt her head in time, barely avoiding a crushing blow by a hair's breadth. Reeling her arm back, Suzu, already prepared to create some distance, suddenly found Yu taking advantage of her momentary opening as she lowered her stance and leaned towards her. It was a swift motion, so fast that it gave no time to react. *pumph*. NGH. The vampire's fist sunk deep into her gut, forcing her to retreat in haste whilst painfully clutching her stomach. It was an unexpectedly aggressive approach from one with an obvious disadvantage in physical ability, so much so that Suzu had not even anticipated it. And by the time she'd realized, evading was already out of the question. But PFFFT_KAHA. Strands of snow-white hair obscured her face as she chuckled silently. Rather than anger or frustration, there was amusement. This fight it was starting to get quite fun. See what happens when you try to steal from me. However, you had heard nothing, remaining unaware as a smug look slowly etched itself onto her face. No matter how small, it was the superiority of gaining the upper hand. Even so, Suzu stood up straight, stretching her back as she calmly rubbed her stomach. Then, with a twisted smirk, she brought a hand up to her face, pushing back one side of her bangs so that it partially revealed her forehead and her gleaming dark red eyes. Tilda, you sure do have an odd way of speaking. She slowly began walking toward you. It almost seems like I'm the guilty one here. A gradual increase in speed, suddenly accelerating. But I'm just taking back what originally belonged to me. She leapt into the air, turning into a full spin whilst simultaneously shifting her posture into a winding kick. *BAAANNNNNGGG. You was immediately sent sliding back a few meters, digging deep trails of dirt and soil that followed two long paths beneath her feet. Bruised red, steam hissed from her injured arms, which had also been hastily raised to guard her face from that attack. Her whole body trembled, not from fear, but Fufu tilde yet, his already mine tilde you taunted. *SHWAAPOW*. Like a blur, they instantly clashed, a fury of punches and kicks, an exchange of countless blows. The air shook with intensity as deafening echoes reverberated throughout the forest. Don't try and stake your claim, princess, it's pointless. That man was never yours. *PAP, pap, pap. Boom. Boom, *. You're still so delusional. I'm sorry, even trying to convince you was a mistake. After all, he's practically already my husband. Is not. *Thunk, Is too. *Pa, Is not. *Wop, Is too. *Pumph, Is not. *FW, Fush, Bang, You fight like a girl. Jackass, I am a girl. At once, both of them viciously swung their fists towards the other, striking each other's faces with the same attack before recoiling in pain. Staggering, they retreated swiftly, holding a death stare that gave no indication of having finished yet. Ugly vampire. Retarded human. Filthy bloodsucker. Retarded human. You've said that already. You talk too much. Then make me stop. Suzu rushed forward, spun on her heel, and struck with her elbow. You countered by redirecting the force with her palm, before kicking the back of Suzu's knee to break her balance. Feeling herself stumble, Suzu quickly grabbed hold of Yu's wrist, maneuvered it over her shoulder into a hip-tossing position, and lifted her off the ground. You. However, Yu wasn't going to let her do as she pleased, deciding to cling Suzu's arm and neck whilst in mid-air and pull with all her strength, resulting in both of them being flung across the ground. The two girls rolled in the same direction, becoming stained with dirt and sediment. And after a few long seconds, they eventually stopped, ending up on their backs as they faced the obscured labyrinth ceiling. Ragged breaths escaped their lips. Sweat drenched their skin and clothes. They were undoubtedly haggard in appearance, yet their faces displayed the opposite. Almost inexplicable, but if put into words, it was some form of serenity. Somewhere in their minds, they had come to understand something. Whether or not it was mutual was a different matter entirely. In such a peaceful silence, they continued staring blankly, only interrupted by the sound of their breathing. However, the still atmosphere was soon disturbed as a tired voice rang out. Hey! Stop being petty. What do you want? Hearing Yu's resigned tone, Suzu turned her head slightly to look over, surprisingly meeting the vampire's gaze. It was far less intense than expected. Are we done now? I don't feel like fighting anymore. Then we're done. Thanks. Why? For giving me the chance to beat your ass. Crazy bitch. Kahahaha tilde. With that, the curtains were finally drawn on a battle between two monsters, marking the conclusion of a feud that had lasted from the moment they first laid eyes on each other. Naturally, a heated rivalry may have yet persisted, but in the process, some form of respect for one another had undoubtedly been established. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk. The fuck happened to you? Confusion, mirth, and exasperation all mingled within that single question as the young man stared incredulously at the two figures standing before him. To this, the two figures in question both awkwardly averted their gazes, silently trying their best to focus on anything else other than his judgmental stare. Aziel could hardly believe what he was seeing and was even more shocked at the fact that he had even somewhat expected this result. Naturally, the two girls in front of him could be no one else but Yu and Suzu. The blonde vampire princess stood with one arm folded behind her back, timidly grabbing onto the other that hung loosely at her side as her eyebrows twitched on occasion. She displayed an aloof demeanor, a straightened posture, and an unperturbed facade that would have otherwise been believable if it weren't for the obvious bright red tint dyeing the tips of her ears. Rather than poised, the way she carried herself now seemed a lot more bashful than what she had probably intended to display. It was cute. Very cute. And the demure white-haired girl beside her wasn't faring any better. With both arms crossed in front of her chest, she shifted her feet uncomfortably every few seconds, seeming to have taken a genuine interest in the ordinary-looking rocks scattered across the dirt. No matter how casual she attempted to appear, her clearly forced smile failed to hide the embarrassed quiver of her lips. Of course, there was no doubt that they were both ravishing, an enchanting sight to behold. No, to put it simply, they were girls any man would quite literally die to pursue. It was no exaggeration. However, their appearance at the moment was less than ideal, to say the least. For starters, whatever clothes that remained draped over their bodies had been left in complete tatters. Torn in odd areas that revealed a substantial amount of bare skin. Not only that, but their hair, previously silky, lustrous, and smooth without flaw, was now disheveled, caked in dirt and wildly unkempt. Even so, in spite of their questionable condition, no wounds could be found on either of them. They seemed untouched aside from their new beggar-like makeover. Still, what had happened was made apparent to Aziel without him even having to ask. After all, he would have to be a true moron if he didn't realize from the start that this was an inevitable outcome. As though too exhausted to remain awake, he allowed his already half-opened eyes to fall further, sighing softly upon not having received a proper response. Now, the only question on his mind was but a single thing, something of vital importance that couldn't be overlooked. Who won? At this, the two girls halted all movement, sharing a brief but meaningful glance with each other. It was a mutual understanding, one they had not been able to reach previously. It seemed that a sort of trust was built, believing that the other would fully convey the honest truth. I kicked her ass. I crushed her. Yeah, no, that much was impossible. Yu and Suzu's voices blended together, each proclaiming victory over the other at the same time. Raising his brows with a none too surprised expression, Aziel opened his mouth for a moment, before closing it immediately after. He nodded in silence. On second thought, it was better to watch this play out instead. How about you tell another lie? You spoke dismissively, rolling her eyes. What's there to lie about? I literally tore you apart. Suzu clapped back, clawing at the air exaggeratedly with her fingers. Li tilde are tilde. If I'm lying, then what's the truth, huh? How about you tell me since I'm lying? Come on, say it, I wanna hear. HPMH, do you not remember how many times I killed you? Silence. Yu's words were followed by an abrupt silence, bringing about a tense atmosphere, and a rare trace of solemnity from Suzu. Before. Did you really think killing me would be enough to make me die? A frigid tone, a voice full of conceit. Aziel almost spat out his non-existent drink. What the hell did she just say? Yu, on the other hand, was at a complete loss for words and could only stare at her blankly. But after a few seconds of not-so-subtle embarrassment, Suzu finally moved. Stiffly, she put a hand up to her mouth as she cleared her throat. Ahem. So, anyways, That gorilla monster really wasn't that strong after all. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I might be too powerful for this place, really. Insane, right? Wow. Would you look at the time? It looks like we'll have to leave soon, or we'll be late for school. Come, lads, let us depart and A flushed heat rose to Suzu's face as the words spilling from her lips became weirder and weirder by the second, but her mindless rambling was promptly cut short by a pale, dainty hand reaching out to cover her mouth. Stop talking, please, you whispered, her expression a mix of helplessness and exasperation. She truly wasn't in her right mind. You wasn't too sure about how she felt at the moment, considering they had just poured their emotions out at one another not even a few minutes ago. However, she understood by now that this seemingly mature white-haired girl was not only straightforward, extremely vocal, and aloof, but also easily excitable. Or rather, very easily excitable. Suzu, though normally calm and composed, would become somewhat intoxicated during intense battles or upon slaughtering her enemies. And as it was, she still hadn't come down from her crazed high after fighting you just yet. Regardless, the vampire princess wasn't one to concede so easily. Or let things rest, for that matter. Just admit you lost. You don't have to put up a brave front, it's fine, really. You prodded gently. If one wasn't aware of the context, they would have certainly denied the belief of her words carrying any malicious intent, but one look at her curved, crescent-like eyes proved otherwise. Suzu struggled a bit as she eventually broke free from her grasp, before turning to glare at the blonde girl venomously. Are you crazy? Are you trying to stop me from speaking or breathing? Please pick one. Yes, you're right and I'm wrong. You're always right, Suzu. You gazed at her with kind eyes. Why does it feel like you're looking down on me? That's because I am. I fucking hate you, you know that. You say it so often, so how could I forget? Come, say it some more, why don't you? You like to talk, right? Yeah, you're absolutely right, I like to talk. I'd just retardly prefer it if it weren't with you. Then don't talk to me, I don't care. Sure, if you say so. I won't say a word to you anymore. Then why are you still talking? But cough how else would I respond? I don't know, just mouth it to me or something. If I did that, you wouldn't even understand, would you? Probably not. See? Alright, you can talk to me. Watching this strangely comical scene play out between the two of them, Aziel was pleasantly surprised. The manner in which they spoke to each other had become far more subdued than usual, and the look in their eyes spoke of their rather complicated relationship. Full-blown negativity was no longer present in their interactions, and had instead taken on a humorous atmosphere. The barrier they had erected to separate themselves was finally broken. Right, before I forget. Suzu smacked her thigh before turning around with a stiff smile. Her voice became docile. You see, about my clothes, do you mind making another set, please? Amen. You nodded in agreement with her words as they both looked up at him with pleading eyes that cleverly hid their guilt. It was a sight that no man could ever say no to. No matter who it was, the answer would always be the same. No. Aziel spoke without an ounce of hesitation. The girl's eyes widened in disbelief, but Aziel continued regardless of their reaction. You want me to make you some new clothes so you can just destroy them again? I stitched those clothes together with my bare hands and yet you. But still just this once, okay? Come on, Tilda, pretty please Tilda. They both pleaded sincerely, but not happening. Aziel, don't be mean. Right, did I really do something to deserve such treatment? Nah, you must be joking. First, you had me stay back here to fuck off all by my lonesome. Then, you come back damn near naked, acting mighty ungrateful, and still have the nerve to ask me for some clothes. Should I just do whatever the hell you tell me to do now? That's then what are we supposed to wear? Amen. You see all these leaves around here? Just pick up a few and you'll be alright. What? No, I won't stand for this. Then sit down. Now, with that, Aziel walked off, waving his hand as though giving them a farewell. However, his last statement seemed to be the straw that broke the camel's back, as you and Suzu's faces went blank for a moment, before turning to look at each other in silence. No words were exchanged, but naturally, they both understood, and using such an understanding, they turned back towards Aziel. "Come back here. Don't you dare walk away from me." Dashing forth, the two girls jumped onto him from behind, clinging to him without any signs of letting go. Aziel groaned in protest, but they paid no heed to it. Though, as usual, it was unknown whether his current attitude was how he truly felt, or a facade with the intention of achieving this kind of effect. After all, when two sides share a common goal, they tend to get along far better than ever before. However, in the end, it was just that, mere speculation. Asterisk. 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 After traveling for a little over half an hour, they found the path to the last floor. It certainly took longer than expected, but they had finally arrived. Standing in front of the massive double doors that were laden with near incomprehensible designs and patterns, the trio wore casual expressions that were completely out of place in a grim setting such as this. That was because rather than apprehension of what might await them, they felt relief that they had finally reached the end. Their journey in the labyrinth was at its conclusion, carrying the weight of many emotions that had been exchanged throughout. New bonds, those broken and mended, and those yet to come. It might have been the end of their labyrinth conquest, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter. One that might possibly last for eternity. Underscore 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 underscore. Yo 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 yo. How long has it been? A few years or something? Anyways, I'm not here to make any promises on a schedule, since that always ends badly, for whatever reason. I have some inspiration, so I'll see how far that takes me. All I can say. But still, I thank thee that have been waiting so long for me to post, as I have been a most unreliable author. Sincerely, I put your stones in the bag. No, seriously, I might just get motivated or something. Try me. 3,657 words. Chapter 48, Chapter 48, Prelude to Departure. 1,348 words. Everyone was different from me. If there was one thing I could say about this utterly pointless life of mine, was that I held a unique position among my peers. If you're stupid, then just be smarter. A rather simple solution for those who failed to keep up. I lived by it, these fundamental rules. If you're weak, then just be stronger. Again, most people were incapable of following such standards, but that was what it was. I was superior to them, to those who died. That too was clear from the beginning. Life was predictable that way, but not entirely unpleasant either. I didn't have a drive to be better than everyone else, things also just happened that way. That was the root of my difference. Like some kind of main character from a fictional story, you come to realize that some parts of this narrative are true. Not everything was roses, but success was always eminent in the end. My mother possessed those qualities as well. You could even say she was heroic in a way, yet sometimes demonic to others. A sour contradiction. But it was for this reason that she didn't want me to be involved in her line of work. She couldn't be sure if I was the same as her. The kind of individual who pretended to be human. Why did you tell him? Why the hell did you let him color Target when I specifically told you not to get him involved? That boy hair is special, just like you. No, perhaps he could be even greater. I've already seen it. It would be a waste to let him rot. I don't give a rat's ass. I didn't want that for him, not my baby boy. Their muffled voices echoed from beyond the thick wooden door, the entrance to my grandfather's office. That was the first time I'd truly seen her angry. And now that I think about it, it was probably the last. Though I didn't really understand at the time. I only wanted to be like her, the person who was closest to me. Even before I was aware of what it was she did for a living, I could tell that she too was different. But in the end, that was all we were. Not some kind of godly or satanic beings. Just alien creatures concealed beneath human skin. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk. Two large hands pressed against the surface of a pair of massive double doors. With a bit of pressure, they shook slightly, causing a grating sound to reverberate as they slowly gave way. Small pebbles and stones scattered, merging with the clouds of dust that gradually wafted up from below. This structure was undoubtedly old, but put even simpler, it was obvious that these doors hadn't been used in ages. Even so, one could see at a glance that no damage had been sustained despite the usual weathering of time. Interesting. I wonder what kind of magic was used to keep this place from degrading. Maybe preservation effects that involve time. No, it seems more like a restorative magic. Standing beside the young man, a stunning girl with long snow-white hair, also known as one of the summoned heroes, spoke. Suzu put a hand on her chin, observing the unique properties of the labyrinth with intrigue. As expected, she was quite sharp. Aziel glanced at her out of the corners of his eyes, displaying no particular reaction except for a pleased glint that radiated from his gaze. Naturally, this was because he knew that her guess was actually spot on. Amen. It does seem like that. Though I've never heard of this variation of ancient magic, but... Ancient magic? However, rather than you, Aziel answered in her stead. It's magic that descended from the age of the gods. You weren't wrong either. The magic being used to preserve this labyrinth's original state is restoration magic. Just as the other mavericks had their own unique version. Suzu looked up at him in mild shock, while you flinched in surprise. From the looks of it, she didn't expect him to know about this. I see, but mavericks? You mean the people you was talking about? Suzu stuttered but continued. Exactly. Hartilda, now it all makes sense. Amen. You nodded alongside her, putting the pieces of the puzzle together based on her own knowledge. So they had this kind of power, huh? The people who apparently sought to destroy the world. I just wonder how true that is. Oh, you don't believe it? Chem. I don't really care even if they didn't. Aziel snorted lightly in amusement, causing Suzu to wonder what was so funny. You seem awfully interested though. Or what? You don't think something's wrong with the so-called god of this world, do you? Taken aback, Suzu's eyes widened at once, while you suddenly stiffened in place. Hold on, how did you? No, wait, you somehow know oddly specific information, like what kind of magic the Mavericks used, and seem to have drawn some kind of conclusion about the gods. Do you know something, Azi? Suzu analyzed. Perhaps. I might know a little, he shrugged casually, taking a step forward into the darkness beyond the double doors. Right, if you say so. And they quickly followed after him. Stepping through the gates, they were directly greeted with a wide staircase that stretched on into pitch-black depths. Each individual stair was smooth and perfectly symmetrical, as if they were all meticulously carved by hand. Moreover, the passageway was also spacious enough to fit at least 10 people standing side by side. Still, although it appeared quite opulent, an inexplicable air of gloom hung in the surroundings. It was ominous, but none of them paid it any attention. Looking around curiously, Suzu stole a quick glance at you. It actually looks nice, unlike the other parts of the labyrinth. Ah, come to think of it, you were a princess, right? This stairway probably doesn't look all that unusual to you, huh? She said, leaning forward as she calmly folded both arms behind her back. No, I've never seen anything like it. You only shook her head, answering vaguely in response. Sensing her awkward mood, Aziel stepped in a bit closer, lifted his arm, gently wrapped it around the nape of her neck, and pulled her in toward his side. Her head was nestled beside his chest as they walked, allowing her to take in his scent and feel his warmth. However, despite her strange posture, she gave no particular reaction, just quietly enjoying his presence. Aziel's expression became a touch softer upon seeing this. It was impossible to remain indifferent. At the mention of her past, he could instantly discern that she still wasn't too comfortable speaking of such things, and understandably so. Though, of course, you wouldn't blame Suzu for doing so, as her words held no malicious intent. Suzu hummed in discomfort, looking at this wholesome scene with a bitter feeling. Then, she stretched out her hand, inserting 2 fingers into his pocket, and allowed her arm to hang limply as they continued down the staircase. It was the least she could do without interrupting their little moment. But even so, this was only a concession she made, born out of the newfound respect she gained for the fierce vampire girl. Like that, the trio progressed slowly, enveloped in a comforting silence. one resting in the arms of a young man, and the other bashfully hooked to the pockets of his pants. It was a scene unimaginable in such a dangerous place, but no one could tell them otherwise. And I mean, no one. Underscore 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 underscore. Dear humans, put your power stones in the bag right this instant. I shall not tell you twice. Jokes aside, not really joking, I really wanted to post today, so I did. If I didn't, we all would have had to probably wait until Sunday, and that's not nice. Anyways, just do as I tell you and we'll all be fine. Do it. Chapter 49, Our Last Stand. 3,113 words. Why do you fight? My grandfather once asked me such an absurd question. I thought it was funny, since he'd been the one irresponsible enough to introduce me, a child, to violence. I had no idea what was going on in that insane mind of his, but to answer that question, I didn't bother responding. Of course it wasn't the response he wanted. So, once again, he asked, "Why do you fight?" No change in tone or expression, he stared me straight in the eyes. I had the urge to laugh in his face. Not for any reason other than the fact that it was difficult for me to take him seriously. He stepped forward and yanked me up by my collar. "Why do you fight?" As I felt the amount of force in his grip, I decided to humor him before he pissed me off for real. For my own sake. Why else? It was simple. To live. Why do you live? I wasn't sure. I have no other choice. Is that all? Well, I didn't know what else to tell him. I had spoken of what first came to mind, but if there were a single answer left in my heart, it would only be that I don't want to lose. The taste of defeat is a sensation I was unfamiliar with. An experience I had never lived through. So, if your next question is whether or not I've ever failed, then, no, I never have and I probably never will. Asterisk. 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 The day of reckoning. The echo of a final step. Emerging from within the darkness, 3 figures stepped into a vast room, so vast that it seemed to be where giants had once dined. Spread out ahead, sleek white floors aligned their path, like the finest ballroom prepared for royals. Massive white pillars engraved with spiral patterns stood tall, sturdy enough to uplift the sky. Spanning dozens of rows, each of them began to glow with a dim light, wreathed in majesty. The trio stood in complete silence, taking in the atmosphere of solemnity around them. It was dark, leaving only the pillars to illuminate a little more than half of the entire room. In such a setting, one couldn't help but feel small, as though reality had shown them just how tiny they truly were. Even so, neither Aziel, Yu nor Suzu gave any indication of being shaken, with Aziel taking the lead as he walked out ahead with long, confident strides. Unhurried, both gloved hands were casually tucked away into his pockets, his brown overcoat fluttering gently. He stared pointedly at the opposite end of the room, which held another set of massive double doors with splendid carvings and indecipherable designs. It was quite a distance away, likely a few hundred meters to be exact. The 2 girls followed close behind on either side, faintly aware of an upcoming battle from the subtle shift in Aziel's demeanor. It was cold, aloof, and somewhat lonely. Though his broad back seemed powerful and all-encompassing, like he would never fall regardless of how much he was broken, it felt as if they were seeing for the first time who he truly was. Just a young man who'd persevered through countless hardships. A young man who'd worked harder than anyone else despite his strength. A young manwo'd always faced and overcome death all on his own. Behind that indifferent exterior, that was the kind of individual Aziel Nox was, an individual that no one could ever compare. The last monster is just up ahead. I'll kill it real quick and come back, so wait a minute. He spoke calmly, turning his head to glance at them before continuing. Stop staring and pay attention. However, upon hearing this, Yu and Suzu only turned to look at each other, a sweet but helpless smile gracing their faces. As usual, it was a tacit understanding, already grasping that fact they both couldn't help but love the same person. It was past the point of animosity. Fighting was useless, an utterly pointless endeavor. Neither wanted to leave, or could even stomach the thought doing so. Their feelings had long since crossed the threshold of obsession, and thus, they were forced to adapt. Since meaning could no longer be found in hating the other, why not try to enjoy their presence? Yes, it was indeed an abnormal shift in thought process, but they were never normal to begin with. After walking for nearly a minute or so, the trio eventually arrived at the last row of glowing pillars. The atmosphere had become increasingly ominous with each one they passed, foreshadowing a dangerous conclusion upon reaching the end. And as luck would have it, that warning proved to be correct. *FWOSSSSH*. Suddenly, a massive dark red magic circle appeared between them and the double doors, pulsing with bloody, malignant mana. Although it was slightly larger than the one that had summoned the Arashan Queen, its oppressive aura was incomparable. It felt as though whatever catastrophe came out of it would bring about the demise of not just the human kingdoms and empires, but the entirety of all mankind. Holy hell, is anyone actually supposed to beat this? Suzu sighed in mock fascination, remaining undaunted by the sight. Probably not just 3 people, a single person for that matter. Yu responded absently, the intricate symbols and inscriptions reflecting in her pupils. On the other hand, Aziel merely watched on silently, rubbing the back of his neck with slight impatience. He was ready to get this over with. And he didn't have to wait for long, as a momentary flash of blinding light filled the room. Aziel didn't bother to shut his eyes, observing closely until the light gradually died down. However, what had emerged from the colossal magic circle was a titan-sized creature with 6 draconic heads attached to extremely long necks. On each head was an engraved pattern with different colors, and a pair of menacing dark red eyes. The Hydra, a mythical creature only spoken of in fairy tales. *RAAAAA. A shriek-like howl filled with endless bloodlust shook the entire room. It was so fierce that it would have no doubt stopped a normal person's heart on the spot. Even so, Aziel took a step forward, leaving the 2 girls further behind. Gazing up at the monster, his eyes glowed softly, his face a mask of tranquility. Flames gathered in the mouth of a single Hydra head, one with a red pattern. Brandishing a single hand toward the massive creature, Aziel simply stared into its many eyes, a gesture it surely didn't appreciate too much. With one final stretch, the head extended its neck, parted its jaws, and released a torrent of flames, enough to burn an entire building or 2 to ash. Still, there was no need to be afraid. Those who were weak couldn't hurt him. Hallowed ground. Without warning, a large golden barrier manifested at his command, covering himself and both the girls behind him. Then, like parting the Red Sea, the tsunami of flames split in 2, incapable of passing through the barrier or harming those inside it. "Don't attack me with something so weak. Who do you think I am?" Aziel spoke in a tone just above a whisper, watching as the flames gradually dissipated. He hadn't taken his eyes off the swaying Hydra heads even for a moment, keeping his arm outstretched toward it. There was no hesitation. No time for pondering. Only a flicker of light. "You want to see flames? I'll show it to you." A spark ignited, a gathering of heat. In his gloved hand, a fire began to burn. In the center of his palm, a red-orange sphere, a blazing inferno came to life. A low, guttural sound reverberated from the Hydra, each head preparing an attack of their own. However, Aziel shook his head lightly. Useless. The blazing sphere suddenly expanded, growing to the size of a wrecking ball. The outcome was already decided. No one could run from it. Those who were weak would die. Standing before the colossal Hydra, he seemed so tiny, yet his level of power was beyond common sense. Burst magma. With these 2 words, the frightening ember suddenly inflated like a balloon, its appearance reminiscent of a dwarf star. But just as everyone thought he was about to launch the attack, the cataclysmic sphere began shrinking. Almost immediately, its size had been compressed into that of a golf ball, floating in front of the palm of Aziel's hand until it had shrunk to nothing. There was a moment of silence. Not even the Hydra, who was previously hell-bent on slaughtering every intruder in sight, had moved past its initial position of attack. Yet, half a second later, *FWA. A hazardous wave. A sunset of red and orange. Like a volcanic eruption, a ruinous stream of molten lava burst forth, blocking out the view of anything ahead. From the central point that was Aziel, all which existed in front of him could not escape its destruction. BOMMM. The whole room quaked in havoc, making it difficult for one to keep their balance. The ears of any ordinary person would have bled from the sound of immediate impact, rendering them incapable of hearing in the short term. However, that was far from the worst of it. The surrounding walls hissed loudly, melting as they emitted thick clouds of dust and smoke. It was as though hell itself had descended. The residual heat was so intense that the ground around him had been left charred. And truly, there was no need to even speak of what had become of the Hydra, as its entire upper half had been completely erased. Only bubbling, seared flesh remained at the base of each neck. In the span of a few seconds, a monster on the level of a continental threat was vanquished in an instant. No matter who looked at it, it was nothing less than absurdity. Still, Aziel slowly turned on his heel and began walking back like nothing happened. Not a speck could be found on him. The two girls watching this scene wore an expression that oozed a sense of satisfaction. "Look at this guy." Suzu folded her arms and sighed, attempting to suppress her excitement at having witnessed such a thing. "You nodded, her gaze surprisingly warm. "You're a monster, Aziel." Though her words ran contrary to this sentiment. "Took the words right out of my mouth." The white-haired girl looked over and giggled happily. Despite their words, both of them had genuine smiles on their faces. Even so, Aziel, who had clearly heard what they said, would never let it pass so graciously. "It's hard being too strong." He spoke with feigned exhaustion, closing in on the two girls until he was within arm's reach. Then, he spread out his arms as though he were stretching before allowing his body to fall limp on top of both of them. "Why? AR." With a soft plop, they were both smothered by him. Of course, it wasn't enough to send them tumbling to the ground, but it was still difficult to cope since he had such a large build. At least, large enough to nearly cover the two of them completely. You're so big for no reason." That's what she said. "Your timing is just impeccable, you." Suzu rolled her eyes, her voice muffled by Aziel's arm. However, while the trio were off bantering with one another, the shadow of a large figure loomed behind the wide curtains of dust and smoke. Noticing this, Yu and Suzu looked paused momentarily as they both looked over. This couldn't have been expected. The thick clouds of smoke were suddenly blown away, marking the emergence of the massive shadowy figure. "Hey, it's alive." The two girls mumbled in confusion, looking between the single Hydra head that had apparently remained alive despite that devastating attack, and Aziel's figure slumped over them. Still, he didn't react in the slightest, causing them to feel a bit awkward about this situation. Even so, the single Hydra head waited for no one, gazing down at them menacingly as an aurora-colored light gathered within its jaws. They instantly tensed up upon seeing this. They knew well that this wasn't the time for games. It was an attack that actually posed a threat to them. But before they could do anything, a voice echoed throughout the room. Frigid and hollow. Piercing and desolate. Only 2 words Aziel spoke, yet it was as though he had ordered the world itself. Cold winter. Just the blink of an eye. Half a second, no. A mere instant. That was all it took for the temperature to drop sharply, for the world to become a frozen wasteland. Delicate flakes of snow slowly began falling, drifting, gradually picking up speed and ferocity. Thick layers of frost enveloped the entire room from corner to corner. There wasn't a single spot that hadn't been touched by ice. If one didn't know any better, they would have thought the end of the world was coming. However, none of this was paid any attention to by either Yu nor Suzu, as they merely stared at the colossal frozen statue of what was once the Hydra. There were no words to describe such a thing. An intricate balance of beauty and horror. A scale of power never seen before. Simply blasphemous. No one would believe it even if they saw it. Out of the realm of what was imaginable, it was simply madness. He was someone who shouldn't exist. Anyone who gazed upon this scene would be forced to realize exactly who he was. The epitome of absurdity. The embodiment of disaster. The harbinger of the apocalypse. No. The God of Extinction. ******. Name, Aziel Nox. Age, 18. Gender, male. Race, Doom Primordial. Estimated alignment, Neutral Evil. Level, 62. Job, World Nemesis. Strength, 7,825. Vitality, 7,605. Defense, 7,430. Agility, 7,785. Magic, 7,710. Magic Defense, 7710. PI, Royal V. Skills, Star Convergence, Rule Divergence, Natural Alpha, Mana Manipulation, plus Mana Discharge plus Mana Compression plus Remote Manipulation plus Mana Emission plus Ether Absorption plus Increased Efficiency, Gale Claw, plus Triple Gale Claws plus Flying Gale Claws, Magic Proficiency, plus Spell Control plus Remote Spell Control plus Multi-Spell Casting, Mana Conversion, plus Stamina Conversion plus Healing Conversion plus Shock Convergio plus Mana Pulse plus Mana Pressure plus Mana Burst, Ethereal Constitution, plus Immense Body plus Peerless Mind plus Gargantuan Presence. Scavenger, plus Healing Digestion plus Self-Sustenance, Attribute Reduction, Anti-Existence, plus Counter plus Armor Piercing plus Energy Leech plus Negate Healing, Skill Reduction, Skill Acquisition, plus Ability Comprehension, Unfettered Motion, plus Successive Motion plus Silent Movement plus Motion Channeling plus Efficient Mobility, Expedited Growth, plus Ability Transcendence, Multi-Hit Strike, plus Attack Compression plus Attack Amplification plus Penetrating Strike, plus Supercharge plus Power Stacking plus Chain Attack, Analyze, plus Power Perception plus Multitasking plus Thought Acceleration plus Clear Mind plus Thoughtless Activity, Transmute, plus or Appraisal plus Precision Transmutation plus Increased Transmutation Speed plus or Perception plus or Desynthesis plus or Synthesis plus Duplicate Transmutation plus Reduced Mana Consumption plus Image Supplementation plus Compression Synthesis plus or Decomposition plus Expanded Transmutation plus Plunder Transmutation, Tailoring, plus Textile Appraisal plus Precision Sewing, plus Increased Sewing Speed plus Reduced Mana Consumption plus Image Supplementation plus Duplicate Tailoring plus Clothing Refinement plus Enhanced Fashion Design plus Sewing Expertise plus Stitching Expanded Tailoring, Cooking Proficiency, Mental Pressure, Adaptive Combat, Persistence, Insight Mimicry, Perfect Magic Affinity, Tracking Evasion, Image Composition, Extreme Damage Mitigation, Language Comprehension, Diamond Skin, plus Diamond Protection plus Focused Hardening, Regrowth, Split Body, Acid Needles, Increased Perception, Spatial Awareness, Tracking, Shock Invocation, Parasitic Spores, Melee Weapon Proficiency, Ranged Weapon Proficiency, Technological Creation, Technical Proficiency, Acceleration, Multiplied Mana Recovery, High-Speed Mana Recovery, Increased Mana Recovery, Power Resistance, Pain Suppression, Weakness Resistance, Pressure Resistance, Air Dance, plus Aerodynamics plus Supersonic Step plus Steel Legs, Telepathy, Lightning Field, plus Lightning Shot plus Lightning. Resistance plus Increased Output, Sleep Suppression, Night Vision, Sense Presence, Sense Heat, Sense Sound Waves, Petrification, plus Petrification Resistance, Observation Detection, Heartbeat Detection, Farsight, Foresight, Hide Presence, Detect Magic, Range Detection, Poison Spit, plus Poison Resistance, Paralysis, plus Paralysis Resistance, Mental Resistance, Elemental Resistance, Physical Resistance, Cold Resistance, Heat Resistance, High Resistance, Adaptive Resistance, Biological Resistance, Amplify Sensations, Farming Proficiency, Animal Affinity, Intimidation. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. 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 Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Name, U. Age, 323. Gender, female. Race, progenitor vampire. Estimated alignment, true neutral. Level, 69. Job, immortal sorcerer. Strength, 2000. Vitality, 2330. Defense, 1700. Agility, 2000. Magic, 13,995. Magic Defense, 14125. PI, Royal 4. Skills, Automatic Regeneration, All Elemental Affinity, Spell Melding, Mana Manipulation, Image Composition, Blood Conversion, High Speed Mana Recovery, Blood Regeneration, Vampirism, form dispersal, blood puppetry, telepathy, night vision, mana efficiency, rapid mana recovery, blood manipulation, plus blood crystallization plus blood transformation plus blood efficiency plus blood clone plus severe bleeding plus blood aura, lie detection, acidic blood, miracle blood, mind compulsion, plus mind link, illusion casting, poison resistance. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. 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 Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Name, Suzu Taniguchi. Age, 17. Gender, female. Race, ancient chimera. Estimated alignment, true neutral. Level, 68. Job, force field creator. Strength, 2765. Vitality, 3180. Defense, 3195. Agility, 3020. Magic, 3990. Magic defense, 3990. PI, Royal 3. Skills, barrier magic affinity, light magic affinity, force field control, image composition, possession, demonic aura, venom secretion, ingestive immunity, seismic detection, nail retraction, prey instinct, chimeric alteration, sand body, sand revival, hellfire breath, heightened senses, recovery magic affinity, mana manipulation, spell melding, gale claw, tracking, night vision, sense heat, detect magic, farsight, sense presence, hide. Presence, foresight, all elements resistance, physical resistance, petrification resistance, fear resistance, poison resistance, paralysis resistance, increased mana recovery, doubled mana recovery, high-speed mana recovery, mana conversion, mana efficiency, telepathy. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk. Asterisk. Blood slid down a narrow blade, dripping from its razor-sharp edge and splashing softly into grass. Phoo. A faint, relaxed breath rang out. Staring up into the clear blue sky, a pair of violet eyes glistened as lilac strands of curly hair swayed gently in the evening breeze. The girl standing amidst the field of corpses parted her cherry blossom pink lips, allowing a voice lighter than spring to escape into the wind. Have I become strong? She glanced down at her sword, gazing at her blooded reflection. Aziel. Underscore 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 underscore. I had a hard time finishing this one for some reason. Anyways, the PI in the status window stands for Power Index and will be explained later, since Arifureta's power system is a little more than dumpster fire. Don't forget to like and subscribe to KUMO-AUDIOBOOK.